Hi, my name's Kevin Petrie and I'm the Vice-Chancellor and President here at Avondale. For over 124 years now, Avondale has been an important part of the work of the Seventh-day Adventist Church in the South Pacific Division. We are proud of the graduates who have left here to serve in all places around the globe. We are really excited to announce that we have just become a full Australian university. And for us, that gives the opportunity to have even a greater impact. We believe that it is the unique identity of Avondale as a Seventh-day Adventist institution that has helped to make it the special place that it is. Thank you for engaging with us. Thank you for supporting us. We look forward to continuing to share with you in the months ahead our journey and our contribution, the impact that we're making on the students that come here.
Hi Burwood, whether you're joining us from a kitchen table or having brekkie at the bench, or you're sitting on a couch enjoying a coffee, or in the car, wherever you might be, it's great to be with you, and I'm looking forward to spending this time together. You might be wondering, when are we going to be gathering next? Well, that's a good question, and the answer is not sure yet. It'll depend on how restrictions change over the next few weeks. We have put together a document which I'd love you to get a hold of. You can find it on the website, and also came out in the newsletter this week, and we'll put it in the newsletter next week as well. Basically, this document outlines, what's going to happen at Burwood based on the restrictions at any given time. So if we have a 1 per 4 square meter ratio that the government places on religious gatherings, then what does that mean will be happening at Burwood? So I want you to have a look at this. You can see there's a different columns for each different ratio setting that the government has. And basically what we really want you to know is, whatever happens, this is what we know will be taking place at Burwood. So hopefully this will take some of the confusion and hopefully some of the unknowns out of the picture. So when a new restriction is announced or an easing is announced, you can have a look at that and say, all right, this is what's coming up next. Just keep in mind, we will need a week for our teams to get ready. So if we do move to the 1 per 2 square meter, or the ratio actually drops off altogether, then we'll need a week for our teams just to get ready and prepare for that service. So keep an eye on the newsletter. We'll keep you posted on what happens, but that document is a great starting place to figure out what's happening next. We're jumping back into our series of Snakes and Ladders and looking at the story of Jacob and the gospel that we see through his story. And this week, we're kind of jumping back into something that we really skimmed over last week. Last week, we had Jacob meeting Esau. And in the middle of this story, there's this little interlude, and that's what we're exploring today. We're going to be looking at Genesis, mostly Genesis chapter 32. So grab your Bibles, get ready, and we're going to dig into this together. So let me give you some of the backstory to this part that we're looking at today. Jacob was born into this family that had been given this promise, that they would bless the world, that all the nations would be blessed through them. And then Jacob himself was given this promise that he would have an inheritance that would be abundant, that nations would come from his line, that he would have this land. And so Jacob, we get the sense that he's kind of excited about this, and he's not too patient. And so he actually steals the birthright from Esau. He steals the blessing that should have gone to Esau by deceiving his dad. And he does these things to try and get this stuff on his own. He's pretty tenacious. He's pretty, he's a deceiver. And that's what his name means. I mean, Jacob deceived people. But as a result of doing that and going out on his own and not waiting for God, it caused all these problems, these broken relationships, these challenges in his life. And so he leaves this promised land that was his inheritance because Esau wants to kill him. And he runs off, and it's fascinating. As the first thing that happened as he leaves the land is there's this sunset scene, and Jacob's making this bed, and he has this rock as a pillow, and he lies down, and God gives him this dream that says, hey Jacob, I'm still with you. I'm still here. I'm still your God. My promise is still good. Jacob is gone. He's worked for Laban for 20 years. He's had deceit and treachery and trouble follow him wherever he goes. But he's come back a wealthy man with wives, with kids, and God has called him back to the land that God promised him. And so Jacob is on the edge of this land, and he's about to cross over the next morning to see Esau. And he is freaking out because Esau wants to kill him. And that was the last thing he remembered. And Esau's coming towards him with 400 men. And so Jacob has got all his family on one side, and he is on the other side. It's nighttime. He is alone. He's afraid. And he's in this place where everything that he is about to experience is actually bringing back memories of the past. He's confronted with all that he has done, with all the deceit, what that's caused. And I don't know, if you've been in that situation where it's been, the metaphorical middle of the night for you, and it seems like all the mess that you've caused in your life has come up before you, and you're confronted with it. It's just not a nice place to be. That's where Jacob is. And that's where this experience happens. In Genesis 32, verse 24, it says, so Jacob was left alone, and a man wrestled with him till daybreak. This guy comes and starts, it almost seems like this guy initiates this wrestle with Jacob, and they are in the thick of it. This is not kind of like standoff punching, but this is man to man, grappling each other, close contact. It's incredibly visceral and almost intimate. There's sweat and bodies and skin on skin, and this is full on, and it goes for a number of hours. So this is not just some little fight. This is a full on battle that is taking place, and this grappling and maneuvering and wrestling and trying to get the upper hand goes on. And then something happens. Something happens which changes Jacob's view of what's taking place. See, he's in this struggle, and if you've ever had a struggle in your life, you're like, man, this just does not seem to end. This is going on and on and on, and no matter how hard I work, no matter how hard I try, I can't seem to defeat this. I can't seem to overcome it. I can't seem to get rid of it. And so this is going on, and something happens which changes it for Jacob. This man who Jacob could not overpower, but the man could not overpower either, reaches out, and it says he touched Jacob's hip. Now these guys have been wrestling, fighting, grappling, and then all of a sudden this man touches Jacob's hip, and it's instantly dislocated. It's wrenched out of its socket. And this man says to Jacob, let me go, for it's daybreak. And this seems to be the moment where something clicks for Jacob. He realizes this is not just any normal man. This is not some guy trying to attack him or steal from him or overtake him. This is a divine encounter with God in human form. It sounds a lot like Jesus, doesn't it? And Jacob realizes that this is actually God who he is wrestling. And it's as if God has been trying to get his attention. He's been trying to say, hey, Jacob, I want to talk to you. I want to show you something. I want to tell you something. But Jacob hasn't been willing to listen, or hasn't been there, or hasn't been ready. And so God comes down and he initiates this contact with Jacob. And so Jacob realizes this, and he says, I will not let you go until you bless me. He says, I want to be blessed by you. And this is interesting because hasn't Jacob already received a blessing? I mean, he got the birthright and he got the blessing of his father as the firstborn son, even though he didn't deserve it. So yes, he got this blessing, but he got it on his terms. He got it on by deceit and by treachery and by lying. And as a result, that caused all these other problems in his life. And I wonder if at this point, Jacob has realized that he has struggled with other people for so long. He struggled with Laban. He's kind of struggled with his wives in many ways. He struggled with Laban's sons. He struggled with Esau. He struggled in many ways with his dad. And he's had all these problems, and he thinks, hey, the problem's Esau, the problem's Laban, the problem's this, problem's that. But in reality, at this moment, it seems as if Jacob has realized that his problem is actually himself. The problem is his own self-reliance. The problem is that he has tried to do things on his own instead of waiting for God, instead of allowing God to do it. The problem is that he is sinful. The mess is a result of what he had done. And so now he's wrestling with God and he's asked God to bless him. And it's as if all that tenacity that has kind of characterized his life, he's now finally focusing in the right direction, and that is towards knowing God, towards receiving his blessing. The Bible says that if we seek God with all our heart, then we will find him. And it's as though Jacob has reached that point where his whole heart, his whole being, everything about him is so focused on getting the blessing of God, of being known by God, of knowing God, that he's willing to give everything for it. And that's, if you're in that position and you're willing to do that, then it's going to be confronting. Because in order to know God and receive the beauty of the gospel in your life, it requires us to acknowledge something within us. And it requires us to be confronted with who we are. And we see that in this story. The man asked Jacob, "What's your name?" Seems like a simple question. Obviously, this man knew his name. This is God. He knew who Jacob was. But he asked this question because he wanted Jacob to acknowledge who he was. Really, the question is asking, who are you? Not what do you do, not what's your job, not what's your family like, not what do you own, not where do you live, but who are you? When all that is stripped away, who are you? He's inviting Jacob to face reality. The reality of who he is. And Jacob answers. He says, Jacob. And I don't think he said that I don't imagine him saying that with pride in his name. I imagine that as he says Jacob, he's thinking about what his name really means and what his life has looked like. I'm Jacob. I'm a deceiver. I'm a heel grabber. I'm a guy who has gotten things, maybe good things, but in the wrong way. I'm a guy who has made a lot of mess. That's who I am. And in this moment, Jacob is stripped bare He is vulnerable. He is exposed. And it's as though he said, this is all I am. And it's an amazing place to be. Because not only does it, I guess, it's challenging and it's confronting for us, but also it's hopeful, because in that moment, in that place, that is where God can meet us. That is where he can say, let me come in, invite me in, and let me do something in your life. And that's what happens here. The man asked him, what is your name? Jacob, he answered. And then the man said, your name will no longer be Jacob. That is gone. That past, that history, that mess, that the person that you saw yourself as, all those things that you attributed to who you were, and that you just accepted that, hey, this is who I am, and I've got no hope. That's gone. You're no longer the deceiver. Your name is now Israel, because you have struggled with God and with humans and have overcome. I don't think that means that Jacob defeated God. I don't even think it means Jacob defeated other people. I think really what it means is that what Jacob won was he overcame because he surrendered. You have overcome yourself. You've overcome who you naturally are. And I think that is really a powerful thing that this divine being has bestowed upon Jacob. He said, who you were is no longer relevant. Now I want you to focus on who you are. And you're one who has overcome your circumstances, your surroundings, not by doing what you always used to do, which was being tenacious and being deceitful and trying to take things into your own hands. No, you've overcome by finally surrendering everything that you are and giving it up. And then it says, then he blessed him there. Now, I would have loved to have been there to see what that was like. These two men, sweaty, tired, probably covered in dirt. And there's this blessing that's exchanging between them. And in that moment, everything that Jacob had longed for when he first heard about this promise, everything that he desired in his life, God was giving him, along with forgiveness for the mess that he had created in trying to achieve those things in his own way, as well as restoration with God and a peace and a sense of healing, that how things were does not need to be how things are in the future. Man, can you see the gospel here? Then he blessed them there. And so Jacob called the place Peniel, saying, it is because I saw God face to face, and yet my life was spared. Jacob had this encounter with God, and he's left with this reminder of that encounter. The sun's rising and Jacob limps off to cross the river and to join up with his family to meet Esau. But with every step he takes and with every limp, he is reminded that he is no longer Jacob, that he now has a new name. He now has a new identity. He is walking a man who has been forgiven, who has been restored, and who is in the process of being healed. You know, it's easy to hear this story and think, man, everything from this point went awesome for Jacob. Just like when you have a moment with God and you experience his goodness and his forgiveness and this amazing amount of grace that he shows you even though we don't deserve it. When you have one of those moments, you can think, hey, from now on, everything is going to be awesome. And yes, it does change the way you live, but the reality is that life still happens. We are not perfected in that moment. We are brought into contact with a perfect God, with a Savior who died for us and who forgives us and wants to restore us. But the process of restoration takes time. As you go through the rest of Jacob's story, you see that he still has moments where he takes back control, where he tries to once again be the old Jacob and reclaim his old name and old identity. He tries to take things into his own hands and instead of waiting patiently for God to bring about his promises in his time. And I resonate with that. I know what that's like. I'm there often. But the reality is, as you offer yourself as a living sacrifice to God, as you place yourself on that altar for him, the thing with living sacrifices is they can get up and they can walk around. And we do that sometimes, don't we? I mean, we say, God, I'm all yours. I'm giving my life to you, Jesus. I recognize who I was and what I had done. And as he confronts us with our own sin and who we are, he offers forgiveness, and we can accept that and we can walk in that and be changed and be new people. But the process of growing more like Jesus takes time. And we see that in Jacob's story. We see that in our lives. I've seen it in mine. Yeah, as we wrap up this passage of Jacob's life, it's actually captured in the book of Hosea. Hosea, this prophet, and through Hosea, God has this message for Israel, the nation that Jacob would come to found. And he says this in Hosea chapter 12. He says, in the womb, Jacob grasped his brother's heel. As a man, he struggled with God. He struggled with the angel and overcame him. He wept and begged for his favor. He found him at Bethel and talked with him there. The Lord God Almighty, the Lord is his name. And then God, through Hosea, has this message for Israel. And I think it's a message for us too. It's a message that reminds us of how do we live in this new relationship with Jesus? How do we live as followers of him, as disciples of his, in the beauty of the gospel? Hosea 12:6 says this, but you must return to God. If you walk off that altar, you must return back. God will get your attention some way. Crawl back onto that altar and offer yourself, surrender yourself once again to him. You must return to your God, maintain love and justice, and wait for your God always. You want to know how to live as a follower of Jesus? You know how to live out the gospel in your life? Love, show justice, and always wait for God. Because as we see in Jacob's story, his promises are good. His promises come true. We just need to be willing to trust and wait on him. Blessings as you dig into this in your discussion questions. And my prayer is that the gospel will be ever clearer for you as you explore this, and it'll be something that you can take on board and walk with from this day forward.